In the journey of romantic relationships, it is common for difficulties to arise and become the main focus of attention. People, immersed in their feelings of dissatisfaction, often look towards the other in search of blame without stopping to examine their own contribution to the situation. This tendency to externalize the problem not only hinders communication and understanding but also prevents each individual from recognizing their own role in the dynamic of the relationship. Through a reflective and conscious approach, we can reshape the way we confront conflicts, turning them into opportunities for self-discovery and personal growth. Instead of waiting for our partner to be the solution to our problems, we must learn to see the relationship as a mirror that reflects our own insecurities and longings. By exploring our emotions and needs from a place of honesty, we can open pathways to a deeper understanding and authentic connection. Thus begins a journey towards personal transformation and true intimacy, where love is built on mutual acceptance and respect rather than distant idealization. When people face difficulties in their relationship, they tend to blame their partner. They clearly see what the other needs to change for the relationship to work, but find it very hard to see what in their own behavior is causing the problems. In sessions with couples, I often ask, "What's happening to you?" The response I usually receive is, "What's happening to me is that he doesn't understand." I ask again, "What's happening to you?" "What's happening to me is that he is very aggressive." I continue to insistently ask, "But what do you feel? What's happening with you?" It is very difficult for a person to talk about what is happening to them, about their needs or feelings. Everyone always wants to talk about the other. Addressing conflicts in a relationship by reflecting on the question, "What is happening to me?" is very different from tackling them with dissatisfaction and the conviction that the problem is being with the wrong person. Many couples decide to separate because they believe that with another partner, it will be different, only to find themselves again in similar situations, where only the interlocutor has changed. Therefore, when difficulties arise in the relationship, we must first realize that they are an inseparable part of the path toward love. It is not possible to form an intimate relationship without conflicts. The solution lies in setting aside the illusion of the perfect partner, in which there are no conflicts and partners are eternally in love. It is interesting how people always seek that ideal situation. And when Mr. X realizes that the person beside him does not fit that perfect fairy tale ideal, he begins to stubbornly repeat to himself that other people enjoy an idyllic relationship, like the one he seeks, but that he has not been fortunate enough to have, because he has married the wrong person. No, that's not how it is. He has not married the wrong person. The only mistake lies in the prior conception of marriage, in the idea of the perfect partner. Part of me finds comfort in the thought that what I do not have, no one has, that the ideal partner is a fiction, and that reality is very different. The idea that the neighbor's grass is greener or that others have what I cannot achieve causes a lot of suffering. Becoming aware of these truths may free some people from toxic feelings. Reality becomes significantly better when I choose to rejoice in what is possible rather than suffer because an illusion or fantasy does not come to fruition. The idea is to make possible living the best possible. Suffering because things do not fit my expectations is not only useless but also childish. So what I propose is to look at the partner from another angle. The angle of what is possible, not of what is ideal. Therefore, we will attempt to consider conflicts not only as a path to overcoming our limitations and an opportunity to get closer to the other, but also as a means to engage with the partner and, after all that has been said so far, as a way to connect with ourselves and achieve our own transformation. The relationship with a loved one helps us grow as individuals, to become better human beings, to understand ourselves better. The relationship completes us. That is why it is worth existing. It is worth the effort, that is, it is worthwhile to strive and work on it. It is worth the suffering it generates. It is worth the pain we must confront. And all this is valuable because when we go through it, we are no longer the same. We have grown, we have become more conscious, we feel more fulfilled. The partner does not save us from anything. They should not save us from anything. Many people seek a partner as a means to solve their own problems. They believe that an intimate relationship will cure them of their sorrows, boredom, or lack of purpose in their lives. They expect the partner to fill the void within them. What a terrible mistake. When I choose a partner with those expectations, I will inevitably end up hating the person who does not give me what I expected. And then, maybe I will look for another and another and another. Or perhaps I will decide to spend the rest of my life complaining about fate. The idea is to find the solution to my own life, without expecting someone else to do it for me. The idea is also not to try to solve the other's life but to find someone with whom to carry out a common project, to be happy, to grow, to enjoy, but not to solve my life problems. Thinking that love will save us, that it will resolve all our problems and bring us eternal happiness or security, only keeps us prisoners of fantasies and illusions and weakens the true power of love, the power to change us. Nothing enlightens us more than being with another, accepting things from this point of view. Nothing is more extraordinary than feeling our own change alongside the loved one. Instead of seeking refuge in a relationship, we could allow its strength to awaken those parts of us that have fallen into lethargy and make us avoid direct and open contact with life, enhancing our capacity to develop and clearly showing us in what aspect we need to grow. For our relationships to develop positively, it is necessary to look at them from another angle, as a series of opportunities to enrich our awareness, to discover a deeper truth, and to be human in the fullest sense of the word. Only when we become complete beings who do not need others to survive, perhaps we will discover another complete being with whom we will share what each of us has separately. That is the true meaning of the partner, not salvation but encounters. Or rather, the encounters. Me with you with me with myself, you with yourself, us with the world. And so, what is the purpose of the partner? We use our eyes to see and recognize ourselves. We can look at our hands, our feet, and our navel. However, there are parts of us that we have never seen directly, like the face, so important and defining for our identity, that it is hard to believe we will never be able to perceive it with our own eyes. To visually know these hidden parts of ourselves, we need a mirror. In the same way, in our identity, in our relationship with the world, there are traits that escape our perception. To see them, we also need a mirror. And the only mirror we can look into is the gaze of the other, which shows us what our eyes cannot uncover. Just like in daily life, the accuracy of the reflection depends on the quality of the mirror and the distance from which we observe ourselves. The more precise the mirror, the more detailed and true the image. The closer I am when I observe my reflection, the clearer my perception of myself will be. The best, most accurate and cruel mirror is relationships with the partner. This is the only connection in which, reflected up close, my worst and best traits are seen. Couples that come to us seeking advice often waste a lot of time trying to convince the other that it is precisely them who are doing it wrong. The idea is to learn to reach agreements rather than assume the role of judges or try to change the partner. If I constantly show you your mistakes, if I live to remind you how you should have acted, if I keep telling you how to do everything, I will make you, perhaps, feel like an idiot, or, worse yet, I'll make you leave me, or even worse, you'll stay and hate me. I want you to truly listen to me with the attention we show toward what is interesting, desired, and loved. If I truly want to be heard, I must learn to talk to you about myself, about my own needs, and above all, about what is happening to me in response to your behavior. Perhaps just this change will be enough for you to find it much easier to hear me. A large part of couples therapy consists of helping each partner to stay in constant contact with what is happening to them, and not to focus on talking about the other. That is, to use conflicts to see what is happening with me and share it with my partner. The idea of this therapy is to help two people who have gradually closed in on themselves to reopen. They generally come full of resentment, with unspoken words, and the therapist's task is to help them relax, to express what they fear to say, to show their pain. How to help two people be open again, to show their true essence, to trust. Primarily by creating an atmosphere of sincerity in the therapist's consultation, helping them to release tension and to show their needs. One of the goals of therapy is to achieve a meeting between the two. In reality, the encounter cannot be forced. It occurs or it does not. but there are specific behaviors that help. Our task as therapists is to observe what both partners are doing to avoid the meeting and show them how each of them is putting obstacles in front of this. If I want the meeting to happen, I must be present, be in contact with what is happening to me. The same applies to my partner, to see what they need and what their pain is. Once again, I see how conflicts represent an opportunity to discover myself, to know myself, to establish contact with what is happening to me, and to learn from it. Couples turn to a therapist because they do exactly the opposite. Every time a conflict arises in the relationship, each partner starts to analyze the other, to tell them what they have to do, to shift the responsibility of the crisis onto them. In most cases, these attempts to shift the responsibility onto the other do not help, and, in the end, they destroy everything. The idea we propose is not innovative, but it is fundamental. Take back responsibility for our own life. In practice, this means that anyone who complains about the situation must be able to ask themselves, what am I doing to make it this way? This does not mean that they become solely responsible for the situation, but it helps them to rethink their behavior. What could they do to improve things? The partner who is affected by the thought that the other is responsible and feels like a victim of circumstances will not evolve, will remain stagnant and hinder the couple's progress. The responsibility of therapists is to help the partners of a couple stop playing poor me and focus on other available options, to find a constructive way out of the situation. Therapists must help them to use the conflict to see what they can develop for themselves, discover what are the dead ends in which they get lost, and what obstacles stop them so they cannot progress. Our experience shows that this is the only approach in which partners can consider their own options, become aware of the power they gain when they realize their potential, feel more creative, and from there, freer. This is the path in which we believe and try to point out. Not to wait for or desire a life without conflicts, but to see in them an opportunity to develop, to learn to use every difficulty we encounter on our path to deepen that possibility, to establish a stronger connection not only with our partner but also with our own essence as human beings. Fritz Perls used to say that 80% of our perception of the world is pure projection. After these words, he would look into his interlocutor's eyes and add, just like most of the rest of that 20%. When a person is indignant about something happening, they must examine what in them corresponds to the cause of their discontent. If, for example, they are bothered by their partner's selfishness, it may be because they struggle with their own selfishness, because they do not dare to admit its existence, or because they do not allow themselves to prioritize their own needs. In any case, their path involves recognizing their selfishness and working on it, allowing the other to be as they want or can. Let's take another important topic for couples: the distribution of chores. If she needs him to take on certain household tasks, then she could negotiate with him to agree on each other's responsibilities. However, if instead she decides to waste her time demonstrating that he is selfish and begins to compare him with her mother, who is just like you, she won't get anywhere. In fact, there is nothing worse than mentioning mothers in fights. It would be more appropriate to say, you can be however you want, but still, let's agree on who is going to the supermarket. Allowing communication to flow is a much more successful and sensible solution than attempting to prove how self-centered or generous each can be. We therapists often propose this little game. During a session, we have the patient express their repressed complaints toward the person in front of them and let them become insults, fool, stingy, tyrant, or whatever comes to mind. We encourage them to dare to say what they think, to shout, to point a finger at the other, and to vent their accumulated resentment. After a few seconds, we ask them to hold that position and look at their hand. We direct their attention to a symbolic and often revealing gesture. While they point a finger at the accused, 3 fingers are pointing back at them. The middle finger, the ring finger, and the pinky indicate that perhaps they are 3 times as stingy, 3 times as foolish, and 3 times as aggressive as the one they accuse. When something in the other bothers me, it almost always means that the same thing bothers me about myself. If I am not in conflict with that trait, I am not bothered that the other has it. That's why I always ask myself, Why does that bother me about the other? What does it have to do with me? Using conflicts for personal growth. That is what it is all about. Instead of directing my energy toward changing the other, let us use it to establish which trait of mine is reflected in what bothers me. Perhaps the expectation of instant happiness, which we usually attribute to the relationship between two people, the desire to experience ecstasy, is due to the illusory prolongation of the moment of falling in love. We know that at the beginning the encounter is passionate, exalted, unstoppable, and irrational. The emotions overwhelm us, dominate us, and for a time we can barely think of anything other than the person we are in love with and the happiness of this happening to us. Being in love makes us feel joy at the thought of the other's existence, experiencing the rare sensation of fulfillment. This state does not last long, but it remains in us as a memory that sustains the relationship and that can be recreated from time to time. After a few months, reality absorbs us, or the creation of a common path begins. When a person is in love, they do not actually see the other in their entirety. The other acts as a screen onto which the lover projects their idealized traits. Feelings, unlike passions, are more enduring and are strongly linked to the perception of external reality. Love is born when I can see the person in front of me when I discover the other. It is at that moment that love replaces infatuation. Once this initial moment passes, my worst characteristics begin to surface, which I also project onto the partner. Love for someone is expressed in the challenge of liberating ourselves from these projections to establish an authentic connection with the other. This process is not easy, but it is one of the most beautiful things that happen, or for which we help to occur. We speak of love in the sense that the happiness of the other is important to us. Nothing more, nothing less. Love as an emotion that takes hold of body and soul and that strengthens when I see the other without wanting to change them. What is more important than the character of the other is the happiness I feel with them, and their happiness with me, the pleasure of being with someone who cares about my well-being, who grasps what I need and is glad to give it to me. That is love. The partnership is more than a decision. It is something that happens when we feel connected to the other in a different way. I could say that based on the satisfaction that closeness with the other brings us, we decide to share much of our lives with them and discover the joy of being together. Still, we must know that it is not enough to simply find a partner. As previously mentioned, it is necessary that they can enrich us and aid our personal growth. Love is built between two people through a chemistry that makes us feel different, perhaps from the magical sensation of being fully accepted by someone. During a group activity, I shared some thoughts related to the idea of love based on the principle, the other is important to me, and with the physical sensation of being with someone we love. Then I asked each of them to say what they thought about love. One of the responses I liked most was from a 25-year-old young man who said, "When we love, we see beyond the visible. In love, aesthetic standards lose their validity." The American psychotherapist John Welwood, in whose approach psychology and Eastern wisdom intertwine, argues that there is authentic love when we love for what we know the given person can become, and not just for who they are. I believe that infatuation and love are states that intertwine in a relationship. Commonly at the beginning, there is a period of passion, during which much of what we imagine, what we project onto the other person is mixed. Thus, we place our ideal man or woman in the place of the human being beside us. Being in love is a relationship with ourselves, although we choose a specific person to project what we feel. And then we could ask ourselves, why did we choose this person? What happens when over time the other begins to reveal their true essence, and this does not match our perception? This is how conflicts begin. The other is not as we thought they were. The alternative in this case is to decide whether we can love the person in front of us, or hold on to our ideal. Love can begin with the resolution of this dilemma when we see the other and realize that we love them as they are. We may even come to love those characteristics of theirs that we do not like, precisely because they are theirs and we accept them as they are. I believe that relationships go through moments of infatuation, moments of love, moments of hate. In fact, love and hate are very close. We never hate anyone as much as those we love. Our relationship represents a shared journey and really endures if we are open, if we are aware of what is happening to us, if we do not deny it or pretend that everything is fine. Being conscious is an important word. Let's be aware of what is happening to us, let's surrender to it. This is how the relationship is preserved and built. The means to achieve this is always the same: to gain awareness, to focus. Only if we are aware of our true essence can we confront difficult situations. Many people live disconnected from their essence, only connected to what they think and without any idea of what they really feel. It is very difficult to surrender to love like this. The most important thing in love is daring to look inside ourselves. So, without the need for conflict, we can look at ourselves, be connected, and be true to ourselves. If we do not show who we are, no one can love us. The most they could love is our mask, as you say, which is not enough. I found a book by Mauricio Abadi in which he talks about infatuation. I'll quote 3 excerpts that caught my interest. Infatuation is rather a relationship in which we do not recognize our partner as a separate and distinct person, but instead perceive and interpret them as our double, whose characteristics correspond to the idealized image we wish to have. In infatuation, there is something like I love myself, seeing myself reflected in you. To be in love means to tell you how much I like you because you hold the mirror so elegantly in which I see myself, to realize my love for myself. But it happens that over time, as the relationship goes through different obstacles, the imaginary mirror ceases to be such, and its natural impulse is to recover its identity. At first, our desire to feel loved and adored was so strong that we paid almost no attention to the fact that we were mistaking the other for ourselves, and that was exactly what happened. We have such a need for love that for a time we enjoyed it, even if it was an illusion. And indeed it is an illusion, as Abadi says, because in reality this passion when falling in love is not directed at you, but at the image of the other reflected in you. Perhaps we should reject feeling flattered by a letter in which someone confesses their unconditional and blind love for us and be able to see that the letter is addressed to someone else. But who could do such a thing? However, no matter what we do, after a few moments or weeks, from 5 minutes to 3 months as you say, the other will begin to reveal their true essence, which they cannot hide, just as we cannot forever conceal our true self, no matter how flattering it may feel to be in love with us and how wonderful it feels to be in love. It's like waking up from a dream. Little by little, a person will emerge who will be surprisingly different from the one we thought was connecting us. It is interesting how people who forget their passion speak and decide that the other has changed, that they are no longer the same, when in reality it is just the eyes with which we look at each other that have changed. A person discovers the differences and these lead to confrontation. When the other resembled us so much, it was difficult to both argue with them and recognize their true existence. It is only now that a person can feel that they are not alone. We must seek the differences and try to come closer through them, unlike before when we were only bound by similarities. I really liked the phrase that I heard you say in an interview. Being in love means loving the similarities, and loving means falling in love with the differences. Infatuation is not a shared feeling because there is still no subject with whom to share. Infatuation is an inexplicable and almost inevitable madness. In fact, it represents a state of irrational disorder, accompanied by manic exaltation. In contrast, love is reasonable but also laborious. It is more enduring, not as stormy, but it requires much effort to maintain it. True love, then, becomes a shared journey, where each of us brings our distinct experiences, deficiencies, and dreams. It is not simply the merging of two beings but the celebration of two individualities intertwining, creating a deeper and richer bond. In this journey, we will learn to embrace differences, to turn shadows into opportunities for growth, and to transform disagreements into bridges towards greater understanding. All this leads us to a space where vulnerability becomes strength and where authenticity is key. Thus, as we look toward the future, we will find that love is not a destination but a path. A path we choose to walk together, where every step strengthens us, every stumble teaches us, and every shared moment becomes one more brick in the construction of a bond that transcends time and difficulties. Because in the end, the most beautiful thing about love is that, in its essence, it reminds us that despite differences and imperfections, it will always be possible to find refuge in the embrace of the other, where true happiness blooms. And so, we will come to understand that love is not just a feeling but the art of seeing the person we love clearly, of accepting both their lights and shadows, and of choosing each day to be part of their story, and of ours.